Mo, we kick it off with Thursday night football. Chargers and Raiders, Las Vegas, sitting at a flat 3-point home favorite, total of 33.5. And if you're wondering why it's such a low total, well, no Justin Herbert, as he fractured his finger against the Broncos in the first half. Chargers lose outright to Denver as a result by 17, closing as a field goal favorite. The Chargers have now gone under their win total in each of the last 5 seasons. And if you know the term chargering, that result when it comes to season-long features probably doesn't surprise you too much. And if you look at how that game played out against Denver really quick, and then I'll swing it to you, Mo, Chargers didn't score on their first red zone possession. That was a result of a Russell Wilson interception inside the 10 or 15-yard line. And Denver cashed on their first red zone trip, which was a product of a Justin Herbert pick. So a little bit of variance both ways, but Chargers red zone offense has actually been pretty efficient so far this year. I believe top 10 or top 15, at least above average going into the game. And the Chargers didn't convert on a 4th and 1 in plus territory to start the second half with Easton Stick. And that led to a Russell Wilson to Sutton touchdown for the Broncos, put them up 17-zip and pretty much iced the game. Maybe I don't know your take on Chargers Raiders, but I thought the Chargers got the benefit of some pretty crappy negative variance, whether you look at short yardage situations like the 4th down or red zone inefficiency or just plain old injury luck. But what have you made of the Chargers so far this year and as it relates to their matchup against the Raiders?
I mean, it seems like they've definitely been on the downswing. Obviously, the pretty poor game they had against the Patriots where, they did escape with a W, but scored literally 6 points. Wouldn't expect that to happen too often going forward. And then, they got outplayed by the Broncos. I think that's pretty clear. Herbert did not have a good game. Like, I know that he got hurt, whatever, but given what he was producing on his way to that injury, I mean, his line was pretty disgusting. 96 yards on 17 passing attempts, took 4 sacks. That's not going to cut it against even like some of the worst teams in the NFL, which is why they had a close game with the Patriots, right, the prior week. So, this is a really interesting one because of the injury and the big line move. I am interested in the Chargers, even though I'm guessing Easton Stick is probably one of the worst backups in the NFL. He's a hometown boy from here. Went to Creighton Prep High School, about 7-minute drive that way. So anytime you can fade a guy who went to Creighton Prep, it's probably a good thing, but I might be on the other side. So, I mean, Aiden O'Connell's been pretty bad too. The Raiders have basically been staying in games with their defense for the most part since O'Connell took over and McDaniels was shown the door. Given what Herbert was putting up in the last 2 games, game and a half, I guess you would want to call it, it's pretty hard for me to buy a 7-point move here. I mean, the Chargers were like -4. This moves a touchdown here against a bad team still. I would also look in this game for maybe some Quentin Johnston props. Man, he's been so bad this year, but it kind of did seem like he had some rapport with Easton Stick when he came in. I mean, Easton Stick hit him for multiple big plays, ended up with like 90-something yards. I'm guessing because of how bad his season numbers have been, and a computer is basically just going to spit these numbers out, it's going to be something low. I think his total probably going to be like 40 or something. I might try to hit some Easton Stick to Quentin Johnston overs here as well.
You look at the Raiders against the Vikings, as you mentioned, their defense keeping them in that game. A 3-0 win for Minnesota. The live total in the fourth quarter, which isn't surprising based on the final score, but you never see. I don't remember the last time this has ever happened. A live total of 6.5 juice to the over in the fourth. And obviously that only happens in scoreless games in the fourth quarter, which is a rarity. You mentioned the Patriots-Chargers game, and we said that was one of the worst games in NFL history last week, or going back to week 13. This is one, or that was one of the worst NFL games ever, for sure. Las Vegas outgaining, or getting outgained. Either way, 3.8 to 3.3 yards per play is pretty horrific.
They outgained yards per play, but they had enough less plays that Vikings had more total yards, I believe, is what happened in that game. So not a lot to write home about with either offense, for sure.
Aiden O'Connell, for me, you mentioned this is Easton Stick, kind of like a homecoming from afar for you, at least in primetime. Aiden O'Connell went to my high school. So I'm right there with you. He's obviously way younger than me, but went to Stevenson. So a little bit of mano-a-mano here. I don't think I'm going to have any action on the Raiders. So that isn't going to trigger any sort of a hometown bet for me. I agree. This is Chargers or pass. Maybe I would consider LA a little bit more if this wasn't on a short week. I like your Johnston look, just with the notion that the Raiders kind of play off coverage and should leave for some separation. Although I kind of think his production, maybe it was a little bit of passive defense by the Broncos late in the second half, which I think led to those two explosive connections between Easton Stick and Johnston. But Surtain having, I think, pretty much shadowing Keenan Allen for much of that game yesterday. So keep that in mind too when it came to Johnston's productivity. But maybe that leads to something down the stretch. And like you said, it's not like his numbers are going to be super inflated based on one game in terms of Johnston's receiving yard total. So maybe that's worth a look. Maybe you look towards the Chargers just because is the line movement justified? Short week of prep, though, for Easton. I don't think I'm going to touch this game, Thursday night game. Just another gross Thursday night game. Total of 33.5. Not as bad as the Patriots-Steelers game. That one went over the total after it closed around 30. As we mentioned on last week's podcast, tied for the lowest total since 1993. So actually turned out to be a decent game from a scoring standpoint, at least as it regards to the betting market. But pass for me on Thursday Night Football. Any closing thoughts, Mo, before we hit on your Kansas City Chiefs?
I would just say that I get where you're coming from, but at the same time, I mean, Quentin Johnson wasn't even getting anything in garbage time with Justin Herbert. So the fact that he was able to produce something at least maybe tells me Easton Stick is looking for him, where I don't think he had his quarterback's trust, and rightfully so with some of the poor play he's had this year. Not going to sit here and tell you I blame Justin Herbert for that at all.